Alex asked us to meet her in the part of the prison where the trains unload, and by good fortune we found the place, as the Combine's evil-looking trains make a distinctive and unnaturally harsh sound with their horns. It's really rather remarkable that both Alex and ourselves arrived at the train depot at approximately the same time. Actually, I guess for all we know, Alex has been waiting here for us for hours. It's good to see Alex again, as we have not interacted with her directly since she showed us how to use the gravity gun. Every chance we've had to spend a bit of time getting to know her has been interrupted by this catastrophe or that. In Nova Prospect, our relationship with Alex changes. Before, she did indeed provide us with aid and assistance, but it was rather one-sided, and now here in the prison we've become actual partners, fighting side by side with her, and each of us watching the other's back. Of course, this interaction is somewhat simplified, but it's still significant. Alex carries some kind of modified fully automatic handgun, which I suppose offers at least a decent amount of firepower. However, we do have to be rather concerned with her safety while fighting alongside her, as she's prone to dashing right into the middle of groups of soldiers without seeking cover, and as we all know full well, if Alex goes down, the game ends. The scene in which we and Alex finally discover Eli Vance, disengage him temporarily from the pod in which he is enclosed, and then speak to him is another important part of Alex's developing character. As we've seen before at Black Mesa East, Alex and Eli already share a close relationship, and this closeness is magnified here in Nova Prospect, as Alex is quite obviously gravely concerned about Eli's well-being. As a result, she is much more emotionally on edge, as revealed by both her body language and tone of voice. We see more of Alex's emotional range in this scene, and I find this important for the fact that the exhibition of human emotion in fictitious characters is a sure way for the reader, viewer, or player to form a bond with that character. And I'm not speaking solely of video games here, I do mean all media, including literature and film. As I've mentioned many times, I find the story more engrossing than the actual gameplay, and the inclusion of emotionally dramatic performances from the game's characters draws you into the story in a way that the action itself cannot. You begin to empathize with and even care about the well-being of these virtual people, and I find it an enormous credit to the game's acting and animation that we indeed do so. We see even more of Alex's emotions during the scene in which she hacks into the Combine mainframe, and we overhear a conversation taking place between Dr. Breen and Dr. Mossman. We learn here that Dr. Mossman was the person who led the Combine to Black Mesa East with the rather silly expectation that they would capture Gordon and leave Eli Vance alone to carry on his research in peace. But her intentions went awry, and in lieu of arresting Gordon, they have taken Eli as prisoner in his place, and now Dr. Mossman, for her part, at least does seem quite concerned with Eli's well-being. During the conversation between these two, we observe, for the first time, that Dr. Breen is extremely condescending, and shrugs off Mossman's pleas for Eli's safety with an almost whimsical aloofness. Probably the most notorious part of Nova Prospect is what is commonly referred to as the Siege of Block D8. We've become separated from Alex again at this point, and after fighting our way through headcrabs and zombies and avoiding electrocution in a flooded room, we come to Block D8 itself. We're temporarily trapped in this area, and Alex contacts us via the radio on our suit to inform us that large numbers of Combine soldiers are heading our way. Now, I'm sure there are as many ways for dealing with the siege as there are people to play the game. There is a large number of debris lying around, and it is certainly possible to use the gravity gun to barricade oneself behind an expedient fortification of some type. However, the sheer number of Combine soldiers coming after you make even a well-built defense only a temporary solution. The best and easiest method for dealing with the siege is to take the three reprogrammed turrets that are available to you, turn them around, and then place them back inside their holding areas facing outward. After placing the 3 turrets in such a fashion, you back yourself into the remaining middle receptacle and await the onslaught. Now, most of the Combine soldiers will see the turrets before they see you, and will expend all their effort trying vainly to shoot them down, or even knock them over if they can get close enough, neither of which they can do successfully because they are prevented from falling over. From this point onward, all you really have to do is outwait the siege and let the turrets take care of all the soldiers. We finally catch up with Dr. Mossman to find that she has the same general idea we had, and that is to use the Combine's Nova Prospect teleport to teleport Eli out of the prison, although as it turns out the destinations Alex and Mossman had in mind was somewhat different. Now, I know I said earlier in the commentary that I didn't like interpersonal conflict, even in a video game. Perhaps I was a bit too hasty, as I do very much enjoy when Alex finally confronts Mossman after discovering all of her ulterior motives. However, at this point, as far as Alex knows, Mossman is working completely for the Combine, and as a result, I think she actually keeps her anger somewhat in check for presuming Mossman has been faithless to Eli, the Resistance, and humanity in general. The biggest hint that Mossman is not all bad comes from not her own excuses, but from the fact that if you point a gun at her, it is automatically lowered. This only occurs seemingly when you point a weapon at a friend, which is a good thing for Mossman, as the overwhelming urge the first time you play through this scene is to simply shoot her and be done with it. As much as I like Dr. Mossman's character, she does indeed push her luck, although we do not know at the time that she does indeed have Eli's best interests at heart. This final showdown in the teleport chamber, I think, does successfully create a keen sense of tension. We're finally on the verge of freeing Eli, but the Combine are at the door, and it seems very likely that they will break in soon. There's a real sense of hurry up involved, and I always wish things would move along just a bit more quickly. Now, given Mossman's behavior up to this point, it's not at all surprising to us that she would hijack the teleport. In fact, it's Alex who takes it the hardest, and why would she not? After all of the effort she has gone through to rescue her father, what an enormous letdown to have his escape snatched away from her at the very last moment by a woman who is almost her nemesis. Eli and Mossman vanish to God knows where, and we're left with Alex to reset the teleport and get ourselves out of there before the Combine break through the doors. It's a bit of a fight against the onslaught of Combine soldiers, though they must have really bad leadership, as the soldiers come at us one at a time as opposed to attacking us as a unit. The entire teleport chamber is shaking and coming apart at this point, and we barely make it onto the teleport itself and raise the shielding before a squad of these so-called Combine elite troops come barging in. Now, this is the first time in the game that we've seen these soldiers in person. I like to refer to them as snowmen. Well, they are all dressed in white. We hang on to Alex for dear life, and with a great flash of light we teleport, hopefully, to some place on Earth, in this universe, that is not underwater or inside of a molten volcano, although that would be just like Gordon's luck, I guess. I do not know which part of the sequence was better, returning safe and sound to the planet Earth, more or less where we intended to go, or seeing Dr. Kleiner holding a shotgun. If you're like me, both things sort of make you feel warm and fuzzy inside. Now, Dr. Kleiner is quite surprised by our presence, and as he soon tells us, it has been an entire week since we teleported out of the imploding Nova Prospect. This is a very convenient plot device, but it is still very effective, and it is somewhat plausible given what I know about teleportation technology, which is, nothing. It could be worse, however. Gordon could have woken up in a hospital bed with a grateful G-Man hovering above him explaining that it was all just a terrible dream. Now, Dr. Kleiner not only informs us that during our week's absence, Olive City 17 has exploded into a violent uprising against the Combine, due primarily to our own actions at Nova Prospect, but also that despite our best attempts, Eli Vance has also been captured and is now held prisoner in the Citadel. Alex, as is to be expected, takes the news hard, but is somewhat reassured by the unexpected return of Dog to the lab. Just as Dr. Kleiner described, the city is in an uproar. We barely make it out the back door before encountering squads of Combine forces. Now, fortunately, we have a giant robotic dog with us who quickly dispatches these troops. This part of the game was actually a bit of a disappointment to me, for just when it looked like we and Dog were going to tear through City 17, taking names and beating down the filth and so forth, Dog himself latches onto a Combine dropship and flies off into the sunset, leaving us behind, lonely and miserable, without the faintest idea how or where to proceed. I would have loved to have had Dog as a companion for the rest of the game, but, oh well, I'm sure he has his reasons for gallivanting off to God knows where. We soon encounter our first batch of Resistance members. There really is only one word to describe these folks: enthusiastic. These citizens are astonished and extremely excited to meet Gordon. The people must have been looking very forward to the day when armed rebellion would begin for their They're as chipper as hummingbirds, and they're thrilled at the prospect of going into battle with the Combine. We discover that these citizen soldiers are not only anxious to follow Gordon into hell if need be, but they are willing to take orders from him as well. We can order our squad to go this way and that, though unfortunately when you tell them to go away, they only remain gone for a short period of time before they come running back to you. Now, I know these folks mean well, but I'm not the kind of person who enjoys giving or taking orders, and frankly, I do not want to be responsible for taking care of these people. Despite their shortcomings, the Resistance members do a marvelous job of blocking doorways, which not only trap you inside of a room, but also, and this is the good part, presumably keep the enemies out. The best intentions sometimes go awry, and I think this is the case with your soldiers. They fight hard and die fast, leaving you feeling awful for ordering them to their gruesome deaths. Now, I wish these citizens shared the same artificial intelligence as the Counter-Strike bots. Now, those guys know how to throw a grenade into a group of their own teammates like pros. I'm awfully hard on the Resistance members, but they do their best. There is one person who always grabs my attention, and that is this female medic. You encounter her just before the Phil's first garrison in the apartment buildings. If you talk to her, she yells at you, "Can't you see I'm busy?" while attending to a wounded man. And after you walk away, the wounded man gives out a shout of pain, and the medic quickly abandons him to join your squad. My guess is that either the man dies, or else this little vixen cannot resist Dr. Freeman's obvious charms. I find this character appealing for two reasons. One, she actually looks very much like someone I know in real life. And two, she's petite, but she carries that huge shotgun, and with it she seems to fight much harder than the other squad members. She is always the first to close in on the enemy and blast away with little regard for her own safety. I always make an attempt to protect this woman as much as possible and steer her out of harm's way, and I often succeed, and as often as not she remains with my squad all the way up to the point where Alex is captured after destroying the generator. It's perplexing to me that I share this sort of emotional attachment with a video game character, but as I've often stated, this is the power of good acting and writing. There's a great sequence when you have to make your way through a collapsed tunnel full of toxic waste and zombies. Before you enter, the man says that it looks nasty in there. Thanks for the tip, Skipper, I never would have guessed that on my own, and I do hope you appreciate the fact that I'm risking cancer and heavy metal poisoning just to open a locked door for you. The thing that never ceases to amaze me about this toxic tunnel is that halfway through there's a minivan that has its headlights on. It must have a long battery life, considering that the tunnel probably collapsed over 10 years ago during the initial Combine invasion, and the van has been abandoned since that time. House-to-house fighting. There are few things more exhilarating. From painstakingly clearing out room after room to not knowing if the next doorway you walk through will be the last one you ever pass, city fighting is non-stop enjoyment, and the Anti-Citizen 1 chapter gives us ample opportunity to engage in close-quarters combat with both the filth and Combine soldiers. Now, I'm certain that those who have engaged in house-to-house fighting in real life may disagree that this is enjoyable, but fortunately we're talking about a video game, and the shotgun hasn't been this valuable since Ravenholm. Eventually, we meet back up with Alex, and I always wonder, what made that door explode? She explains to us that in a square outside there's a generator that needs to be disabled. This battle for the generator is another turning point in our relationship with Alex, for we have gone from receiving her assistance in the beginning of the game, to fighting alongside her in Nova Prospect, to now directly protecting her from harm while she carries out the time-consuming business of disabling the generator. You can see that as the game has progressed, we have become less and less an unwitting victim of circumstance and have transformed into the actual hero of the story. I do like this gradual development of Gordon's role much more than what is often the case in most action storylines, in which the main character is right from the start a sort of Rambo archetype, running and gunning willy-nilly with no regard to plausible plot devices. This generator battle is also the first time we directly engage a pair of Combine snowmen. I hate these guys. And just as we've come to expect, as soon as we begin advancing through the game with Alex by our side, she is snatched away, this time literally by the Combine. And now our role progresses even another step forward, as we have turned from Alex's protector into her rescuer.